Good morning. Thanks for joining us at this hour. And if you're watching after this has rolled live, then thank you for joining us then. There's a lot of things going on in the world of beekeeping, and I think that there always has been. However, each generation has to deal with multiple problems, and it is our turn. Hooray. So, there is much to discuss. This is a conversation primarily around the yellow legged hornet and the tropicalaps mite. What we could be doing, what we should be discussing. The conversations are important. Our goal is not to create a mass scare or to just get clicks, because this is the wrong industry if I'm trying to get rich on YouTube. However, and this video is not even monetized, by the way, we want folks to be having these discussions. I believe that an informed public is very important. Conversations are important. Communication is important. Just ask your spouse. And we have special guests. We have Randy Oliver, Charles Linder, and Dr. David Peck that are joining me live. Thanks, fellas, to discuss these issues. And before we get started, just if you're coming to the Bee Expo, be sure to check out the Educators of America booth at booth 810, and they are going to have a yellow-legged hornet nest and some tropicalaps mites in a sampler to where you can use a microscope. I'm sure there's a technical term, but I'm from Tennessee, so don't hold it against me. Guys, thanks for joining me this morning.
Good morning, Cameron.
Thanks for having us.
Well, you know, every time I see you guys, it's always bad news. Bad news. You're the bad news bears at this point. And thank you, though, for joining me. You all are going to be at my show this year again, and I do appreciate what you all are doing in the industry. So, Charles, I want to turn it over to you and let you talk a little bit about this petition. That's really important. I'm going to be signing it. Everybody, I think, needs to be signing it. These things do work if enough people put forth the energy.
Well, we don't mean to be the bad news bears. We just have to be the guys who are actually aware of the issues and trying to make sure that they get tackled adequately. If we don't talk about these issues, address them, then we'd have no ability to complain when they actually get here. So we're just trying to be proactive, not alarmist. So
sure.
David, I met David again here at Florida, I think. Was that where I saw you last, David? Yeah.
Yep.
And Dr. Jeff Pettis was talking about yellow-legged hornets, and I've had a couple of phone calls about them, and of course David was talking about them. So I'm going to let David tell you about the yellow-legged hornet, because he knows more about it than I do, that's for sure.
Well, yeah, the subject, this was at the American Honey Producers Association meeting, is what is being done, what can be done, what is going to happen next. Which is always what happens when a bunch of beekeepers get together. And the advantage of that meeting was that they were co-meeting with the Apiary Inspectors of America. So we had some of the folks who are the boots on the ground for the yellow-legged hornet invasion that began in Georgia and is now in both Georgia and South Carolina. And one of the things that we were all talking about was that, we heard the early rumor that there was going to be a press release, which has just been released by South Carolina through Clemson, about the fact that they documented a case where a yellow-legged hornet hitchhiked from southeastern South Carolina all the way up to northern South Carolina on, accompanying a human in some way or another, on a truck, in a potted plant, in some firewood. Who knows how she got up there, but she got up there and was able to found a nest. And that really is a wake-up call, and it should be ringing alarm bells that this pest, which has been devastating Europe for the last couple of decades, has now caused a huge amount of harm there, and is potentially going to cause a huge amount of harm here if we don't do something to get them under control.
Yeah, I think that was the real wake-up call for me. Up until this point, we've kind of been led to believe that the state of Georgia and state of South Carolina had this process under control. APHIS is involved, which is the Animal Plant Health Inspection Services at the federal level. But then talking to people who were actually at that meeting and boots on the ground, APHIS provides funding and advice, but they don't actually do any boots on the ground work. They're leaving that at the state level.
Right. And the folks at the state level, both in Georgia and South Carolina, I've met most of these folks, and they are doing stellar work, amazing work, unbelievable work, and very important work. And it's not enough. And every one of them, you may have to get a couple of years into them, but every one of them will tell you the same thing, that they are working their absolute butts off. They are spending whatever money they have access to in order to fight these hornets, and they're making progress, they're making strides, but then it's one step forward, 5 steps back some months. And so there is a real tremendous concern that we're going to be able to get these things under control.
Yeah, there was an interesting conversation with one of the people who's been involved in Georgia here last week at the AHPA, and she's convinced that they're making a lot of progress in Georgia, but then when I look at the area map, the area just keeps getting bigger and bigger. And I guess up until our meeting in Florida that we talked, I just didn't realize myself how big a problem this yellow-legged hornet was going to be. We saw. Go ahead, David.
Well, that's really common with invasive species. Is that when they aren't in your country, you don't know anything about them, and when they're in your country but they're not in your region, you still don't really know much about them. You have to do a lot of work to convince people to care about something that isn't right next to them, even if it's right next door in the next state or the next county. And so this, I think, should be the wake-up call for the country. The action should have been taken earlier, but certainly we need to do whatever we can now to get these things under control. And I think the biggest sort of disappointment for me, I guess, is that they documented this case of this hitchhiking hornet queen going from southern South Carolina, where they admit, a lot of that area is swampland. They can't get out there to fight these hornets, even if they wanted to. But that area that she hitchhiked from, I almost wish she had, caught a ride with somebody moving out of state and they had shown up somewhere else in the country, because it was emphasized just how easily that can happen. We sort of got lucky that they happened to just get reestablished in northern South Carolina instead of North Carolina or Virginia or Indiana. It could have been anywhere. It depends on wherever that vehicle drove that she happened to be hitchhiking on. Mm-hmm. So, the fact that they're still in just 2 states sort of makes it easy for people to say, well, I'm not going to worry about that until it gets closer to home. But that's not how this works. And I think one thing that we often also fail to do as beekeepers is we don't turn to the experience of other beekeepers outside of the U.S. as often as we sometimes should. Mm-hmm. That was true for Varroa. Like, we didn't have Varroa treatments, but Europe had a bunch of Varroa treatments, and then suddenly they got here and we were running around with caught with our pants down. But the Europeans have known about this. And we know that in, one example that I find really striking is they documented 2 nests in 2012 in Galicia, Spain, sort of the northwest corner of Spain. And it was, one way up in the northeast and one way down in the southwest. 2 nests, just 2. And they were looking for them, and that was all they could find. 4 years later, they identified 10,642 nests. So that's how quickly and aggressively these things can spread when they're in suitable habitat. And unfortunately, a fair amount of the U.S., especially the Southeast, is suitable habitat. So if we dither around and wait for it to become our problem and instead of somebody else's problem, it might be a problem that we can't fight.
Well, let's talk about that for just a second, because I understand it.
Let me jump in here for a second, Charlie. Last year I was over in England speaking, and also visiting beekeepers in France. And boy, when you see it with your own eyes, you come back scared. The point to the transport in England, the English Channel between France and England, it's a highway for yellow-legged hornets. They love to hitchhike on trucks, they hitchhike on boats. So they use humans as transport. So it will spread rapidly to the United States. The second thing, and then this is a point like in Australia, somebody said, asked me, an Australian said, well, how fast do you think the Varroa will spread in Australia? And I said, what's the speed limit on your highways? That's how fast moves things around. That will happen with the yellow-legged hornet. The second thing, in England, the National Honey Show, the talk was all about trying to control the yellow-legged hornet. They are way ahead of us. We should be learning from what they're doing. Mm-hmm. Over in France, I visited a beekeeping operation in the fall, And they had, out in the apiary, they had buckets of sugar syrup out with a 3 to 4 inch layer of drowned hornets in each bucket. Just the colonies could not go into winter because any bee that flew out and coming back was nipped off by a yellow-legged hornet. So your colonies just couldn't even go into winter with anything, no stores, because you couldn't have any foraging from this massive influx of the yellow-legged hornets, the last reproductive phase that's very hungry for protein. So this is not something to laugh at. It just really brings us to our knees if it comes. And I feel we should call out the National Guard, literally. Literally, we don't need the National Guard to protect ICE agents. We could use them to actually get out there and use military technology, use, like Ukraine, use drones to identify the nests in the trees in those inaccessible areas. There'd be no problem getting a drone set up with some little gun that would shoot a little bit of fipronil into a hive without a human being anywhere near there. We shouldn't limit ourselves on how important this is and how we really need to hop on dealing with the yellow-legged hornet. It is here right now. We have a chance of keeping it from becoming a permanent resident. And this immigration control, I agree with entirely. We do not want the yellow-legged hornet to become a permanent resident.
So will these two bugs kill other pollinators and not other only honeybees? I think it's a good question for right now in this point of the conversation. So, what are we hearing about is how much they're suppressing other things besides honeybees?
Well, the studies that I'm reading is they're seeing a 30% loss of all pollinators across Spain and Portugal right now. So these guys are protein hungry things. We think of our bees as being a problem. The hornet actually hawks over the nest. It doesn't go in like the killer hornets. It waits outside for them. But I'm being told by Jeff Pettis that then they stop foraging, and then they also eat any other butterflies, wasp, any other bugs that they can get their hands on. At 10 nests per square mile, these guys are going to devastate a lot of stuff, a lot of pollinators. Does that sound right, David? I mean, that's the numbers I'm seeing.
Yeah. The thing to understand is that first, some folks may be familiar with European hornets, and European hornets will occasionally come down and, bother a honeybee colony, but they're not really specialists. These things will eat any protein they can get their mandibles around, but they are really keyed into honeybee colonies because they know that honeybees are just sort of this perfect economic engine of going out, getting resources, bringing them back, turning them into protein, and then they can just grab that protein out of the air as a bee tries to leave, chew her up, take her thorax back, and get it. So they target honeybees in particular, but they will absolutely take anything that they can get. And if you are an insect that can catch a honeybee in midair, kill her, avoid getting stung, rip her apart, and take her home, a lot of other things are going to have a hard time fighting you, right? Butterfly doesn't even have a stinger to defend itself. So, the yellow-legged hornet is a real devastation to a lot of insects. Tropolaelaps, the one nice thing I guess I can say about it is it seems like it pretty well is only going to bother honeybees. At least as far as we know, it is only a pest of honeybee species. It's specialized on honeybees. So, devastating though it would be if it got here, at least the silver lining might be that the bumblebees would be okay. We can't say the same thing for the yellow-legged hornets.
So during that segment right there, obviously folks who are not beekeepers, who are just interested in pollinators, whether it's putting their butterfly gardens out, or there are folks who are really into building little homes and little clay areas for native bees because they like to help the native bees out. This is a problem with for our native bees, honeybees, anything like that. And this is a question right here that kind of I think goes right into it. Hey, I was going to make some traps this spring because they'll probably be here this year. I'm not far from Savannah. What can people do that are in that area or that are near that zone be doing to let those folks know with South Carolina and Georgia? Because talking to the apiary inspectors at the honey producer show, that they want people to set out traps and to monitor them and let them know, hey, this is a yellow-legged hornet that we have in this trap. And even if it's a non-beekeeper, they were telling me, stick those out there. If you catch one, let them know so they can try to take the nest out.
That's
right.
it. They're out there. They've got the resources and the training to go and get the nests. They need to find them. And so anybody who puts out a trap and is able to correctly identify these things and then report them to the right agencies is going to be able to trigger that response. And it's the closest thing our country has to an immune response against these things. Is, you got to find it, you got to recognize it, and then you can, bring out the big guns to try to destroy them. But one thing I do want to sort of interject and correct, this person who's near Savannah, obviously, go out, set the traps, because the odds are pretty decent these things could wind up your way. But because of this hitchhiker event that we've just seen, I would recommend that beekeepers all over set out traps for these. Put out traps, monitor to see what kinds of nasties, what kind of hornets are in your area. And if you think it could be one of these, bother your local, bee inspector or your local, university. Those entomology departments exist to help with this. And even if 9 times out of 10, you're going to be sending in a European hornet or a cicada killer or some other kind of wasp, it would be better that we catch it and catch it early if it is these bad guys. The other thing that I'll just kind of throw in there is we've got 2 really important stories that have come out of this yellow-legged hornet invasion. The first is the very first hornet that was found, the very first nest that was identified, and then the second is this hitchhiking case, this event where they went from southern South Carolina to northern South Carolina. In both cases, the people who found these were early stage hobby beekeepers. The first time, it was a brand new beekeeper. He was out in his yard just staring at his bees because he thought they were so darn cool coming and going from the hive. And he saw these wasps coming and bothering them. And he was really annoyed. So I think he got a stick or a fly swatter or something and knocked them out of the air. And he reported them to his bee club or the state apiarist or to the university. I can't remember which. But basically he said, hey, I got this thing and I'm Googling it on my phone. It looks like it might be this horrible invasive pest. And they said, okay, brand new beekeeper, sure thing. We'll take a look at it. And it turns out he was exactly right. That's what it was. And more or less the same thing just happened with this hitchhiker case. They said, we've got our containment zone around Savannah and southern South Carolina. We're fighting them. We're boots on the ground. We're doing everything that we've been equipped to do. And somebody way up north in the state said, I think I've got one of those too. And that person was also correct. So monitoring widely is a good way to at least figure out where these things are.
The tennis racket comment is kind of funny because Jeff Pettis, he commented that a lot of French beekeepers are doing exactly that. It doesn't help much, but it makes the beekeeper feel really good to swat a few of them.
It's like smashing a hive beetle with a hive tool.
So this is a question: will traps be available at the North American Honeybee Expo? And the answer is, unfortunately, no at this point. So there's, I don't know anybody.
Let's say maybe.
Oh. There is some DIY trap advice on the Georgia and I think on South Carolina also. Some YouTube videos on how to make hornet traps if you're struggling with that.
If you got an old juice bottle, you can rig yourself one up. If you just want to be trying to catch and monitor these things, and it's important to understand the purpose of the trap is not to exterminate the hornets in your area. It's just to find them. It's just to identify them. And then once they're found, more action needs to be taken. These things, we haven't talked that much about the biology, but for those that don't know, these things start with a mated queen at the beginning of the season. She makes a little nest and a few workers, and then they make a bigger nest. And they actually sort of migrate and found new nests throughout the season. But at the end of the season, when they're making the new batch of queens and the new males that are going to be the next generation of hornets, they're typically way, way, way up in the tippy top of an enormous pine tree. And those nests are about as big as I am. Like I posed, I've got a photo of me next to one in Georgia that they pulled down out of a tree. But these things are massive. There's a huge number of hornets in them. So it's not just a beekeeper with a tennis racket or a trap in your backyard that is going to solve the problem. But if you think you see a hornet that could be bothering your bees, absolutely blast that sucker out of the sky and then send it to your university or your bee inspector, or take a photo and just post it, and somebody will weigh in and either say, you dunce, that isn't a yellow-legged hornet, or hey, where are you? Because we're going to send some guys out to take a look for that nest in your area.
We should keep in mind, as far as this is not just a beekeeper issue. This is anybody who grows vegetables in the garden that needs pollination, anybody who has a fruit tree that needs pollination. This is going to impact everybody. If you don't have the honeybees and the other native pollinators, you're not going to be able to pollinate your fruits and your vegetables. So this is every farmer, every home orchardist should be interested in helping to detect these.
It only affects everybody who eats food.
Exactly.
Well, let me talk for a minute here about why I asked Cayman to do this and get these two other important guys, much better looking important guys, I might add, to have some conversation this morning. I'm personally very frustrated at the process that we use here between APHIS and then the states. The invasive species program in the United States is far from adequate. And I want to leave it at that. I do know that, the people in Georgia and South Carolina are doing their best, but this is a nationwide
Absolutely
problem. And what we're doing is we're turning it over to a state Department of Ag and hoping that they jump on it with the same intensity that we would. And despite all their efforts, obviously this is getting away from them. Mm-hmm. So as a country, we've got to do a better job of invasives, and as an industry we definitely have to get involved in this. One of the bigger problems I think we see, and I anticipate this with Tropilelaps coming, this is a bellwether for me to get involved here, but most people don't understand how bees work like beekeepers do. I'm guessing that most of the people involved with the yellow-legged hornet, this is all fairly new to them, whereas beekeepers themselves, we can say, hey, look, this is what you need to be aware of. These are big problems. Pay attention to this, that, and the other thing.
Turn your stupid phone off, Charlie.
Sorry.
Is that me? I mean, where's that coming from? Sorry, guys. I went for professionals, and this is the best I could dig up this early in the morning. So.
Well, so what you're going to see is on our website here is a petition. And we're hoping that everybody watching will talk to everybody they know and get them involved. And what we're shooting for here is to have a serious discussion with the House or Senate Ag Committee or one of the Secretaries of Agriculture about how to do better prevention. At the moment, our funding is limited. Our resources are limited. The people involved in this, their hands are tied. I listened in a meeting the other day about the yellow-legged hornet, how we had an expedited process for pesticides that could be used on the yellow-legged hornet. And I had to laugh because I've had the courtesy of talking to a couple of the researchers involved. Some of them actually want to go to Guam to test a new pesticide. And I chuckled and I said, well, why are you going to Guam? And he says, I can't get an experimental use permit in the U.S. So just so everybody understands, the Department of Ag and APHIS, the federal government, can only use approved pesticides for these insects. But since we've never had these insects before, we don't have approved pesticides. It's kind of, as far as I'm concerned, a Three Stooges moment where we're standing around poking each other in the eye. And although we have an expedited process, nobody at APHIS or the states is going to the EPA and slamming the door and saying, look, guys, we've got to have some help here today, not next month, not 2 years down the road, but today. So we're at this point with yellow-legged hornet where as everybody I talk to says we may have one more season where we can control it. But there's a lot of doubt about that. So we've got to get moving here. We've got to get something going. We need a national director who's probably a former Marine. Someone who's wants to get this job done and is dead serious about it.
Mm-hmm. And I just want to sort of chime in here and say the folks in these departments of ag are doing a great job. Right. The folks in APHIS are doing, I think, as good a job as they're able to do, given the rules they have to follow and the way the law is written that empowers them. So it's not. It's hard to find a person to blame for this. But I think we can look at the whole system and say it doesn't seem like it's worked that well for too many things in the past. Mm-hmm. And this is real bad for beekeepers and for everybody in the country. So it would be really nice to get this thing under control. And so if we can clear out some of the bureaucracy, if we can clear that logjam, if we can create a system where, under the right circumstances, an emergency lever can be pulled that makes things go faster, makes paperwork clear faster, lets some corners be cut, empowers some groups to do some different things. It would be really great if we could get the yellow-legged hornets under control, if we could fight them back, if we could eradicate them. I think more importantly, if we can clear the logjam now, if we can figure out what the correct path looks like now, if we can get laws passed or changed now, when or if tropolalaps mites get here, which are absolutely more devastating than yellow-legged hornets are for U.S. beekeeping, they just are further away. So the opportunity, I think, to clear the logjam with the yellow-legged hornets, use them as the battering ram, is going to maybe make it easier to fight the tropolalaps when and if they ever show up as well. So even if you don't think fighting these hornets is that important, I think in some ways it's a proof of concept for a more important fight that's on our horizon. But that being said, the hornets are real bad. It's not like this is sort of a goofy little insect and we're just doing a test case. They're a real, genuine pest. They cost millions of dollars across Europe to beekeepers, and they can devastate colonies. There are some estimates that suggest that in France, 10% of the annual colony loss is caused directly by these hornets. That, think about whatever your colony losses are, and then add 10% because now these new hornets are here. That's what we'd be facing. That's not something a lot of beekeepers can sustain.
Most of the numbers I saw were much higher than that, Dave.
Yeah.
Talking 10 to 80%, which is
right,
crazy. But you mentioned something that's real key here. The screwworm program. Most of you listening to this have heard of screwworms a little bit just because the federal government just put $300 million into Texas to stop screwworms. We have a proposal to ask for, in this case, $80 million for 5 years for the prevention of invasive species. We want to use that benchmark. We want to use that standard that we've used for screwworms as something the industry is getting involved in here in the U.S. Yellow-legged hornets, as you pointed out, is a perfect test case. Figure out how to work with state agencies, understand the movement. It came in through the ports, the same kind of process, understand the EPA and FDA roadblocks for using different treatments. And all of that should translate to tropolalaps when and if it gets here.
Charlie, how did the screwworm eradication program get initiated? When we talked about who's to blame, it's only ourselves because we haven't made enough noise to get the government to our government. It's not the government, it's our government that we complain to or make suggestions to, but we got to make noise to get them to do it. So the cattle industry has a big impact and a loud voice in Washington, D.C., and they were able to get that $300 million because they spoke up. It's time for us to step up and mimic what the other large ag industries do and let our legislators hear from us. And this petition is the beginning of this, but we got to be not just speaking, we need to be yelling at them. We need to have something done.
That's exactly right, Randy. The cattlemen's industry got involved. They said, look, this is going to be a $1.9 billion problem in the state of Texas. And so they got $300 million cash. They got another $700 million spent on a reproduction facility for flies. Bottom line, they spent close to $1 billion just to protect Texas. In this case, yellow-legged hornet is going to devastate the bee industry in Georgia. The queen breeders down there are going to be really hit hard, and it's just going to continue. Now, the yellow-legged hornet's probably going to take 10 years to get across the country. It doesn't spread super fast, but
unless it's in a car.
Agreed. Understand that. But looking at France and what's going on over there, it's taken 10 or 15 years. But the devastation, it's much bigger than 1.9 billion in the state of Texas. This is 15 to 30 billion across the entire country because everybody who pollinates crops is going to suffer from this.
So this petition, we need a lot of people to sign it. We need everyone in the comments to sign it. We need you to tell everyone at your bee club. We need you to tell people at your state meetings, and then tell your neighbors and all your friends that like bees and eating honey and all that kind of stuff. Because that's one of the biggest issues that beekeepers face. We're just not very big. If when it comes to representation, we're Rhode Island. We're very tiny, and we're competing against the cattle industry and the grain industry and all these other industries that are also trying to get money because they have issues as well. And in fairness to some of these groups, they do have other invasive species going on, emerald ash borers, screwworm, other issues. And so the squeaky wheel gets the grease. The beekeeping industry hasn't been very good at being very squeaky. And we need to do that. We need tens of thousands of signatures on this thing. I'd like to see 30 to 40,000. Oh, sorry, that's Mike with Global Patties. And sorry, Mike, if you're watching this video in the future, I'll get to you later. But this is important to all of us. I love watching moths pollinate different types of plants. And we have several beetles here. Tennessee, especially in the area that I'm in, because we have very little agriculture or a lot of hills and maybe a little bit of cattle every now and then. But we have so many pollinators in this area because we have such good habitat. We also have a very good climate for something like the yellow-legged hornet. And someone asked earlier a question, can they survive a decent winter? And the answer is absolutely. Now, are they going to build up to as big of a population as they will in Florida or Georgia? No, but it's still going to be a problem because you have a long winter to go through. So you need a really robust cluster to be able to go through that. So you don't need yellow jackets, robber flies, yellow-legged hornet. We're already dealing with enough issues. And the other problem that I would say is this is a critical time of the year when these things hit the hardest. It's when our bees are trying to get that fall flow pollen, fall flow nectar. This is that critical momentum to go into the winter that these things are releasing so much energy against our colonies. And what I've personally seen in 20 years here, where we have so many different bugs, we have assassin bugs, robber flies, yellow jackets, and European hornets, which aren't anything like what this is as far as the size that they can get to and how specific they can be at killing bees. Every time I put bees into a new yard where I've never had one, the first year it's pretty good on a lot of these pests. You'll see a little bit. But after the course of having these bees in one location for multiple years, all of those critters I just mentioned, we see them increase in population because we're creating an ideal habitat for these pests. And so for them, our honeybees are a perfect smorgasbord of nutrition with a honey-filled center. And so I got to throw some humor in there because if not, I'm just going to cry. So sign this petition, get your grandma who's blind to say, hey, this is really important. She doesn't have to know. Get her to sign it.
And what we're asking for in this
my wife just came and shook her head.
We're not demanding anything in this petition other than attention. We actually seriously, we understand that petitions have limited use. All we're saying is, look, guys, there's 20 or 30,000 or the 100,000 that came and promised me to sign this. No, he didn't promise that. I apologize. But we need to make sure that the government, our politicians, our representatives understand this is not just a little issue. This is not 15 beekeepers. This is not me, David, and Randy all excited. This is everybody across the country from all areas who are very concerned about the invasive species problems that we have for our industry.
Mm-hmm.
So people are mentioning traps and various things. And in Europe, there's a lot of different designs. There's homemade traps. There are some that you can purchase. And there's already people talking about, how the government's, wanting to sell us a new thing and stuff. The government hardly recognizes the beekeeping industry at all. That's the problem. The beekeeping industry doesn't generate enough money for the government to go, what device could we make for beekeepers today? Because they're not looking to lose money. And it's not that there are some companies that do make profits in this industry. But when I'm going to like Apimondia and I'm talking to the folks that make Apifar, talking to the folks that make Apigard and all these different products that we have, most of them have other businesses outside of beekeeping because beekeeping is such a small area of profit for their company. They're in agriculture and other endeavors, and they look at it and go, well, by the time we spend all this money for regulations and by the time we get all this inventory and do all these things, it just takes so many years to make back our investment and our researchers and all that. And so we don't see a super aggressive push for innovation because the profits aren't there. And so that's another issue that we are also looking into. That's another side issue. I'll just quickly say that there are people in this industry that are looking to get a special license or clause or whatever you want to call it to make it more affordable for any company that exists or a new company to be able to go through the regulatory systems and get an approved, safe, either miticide, something that'll take care of this yellow-legged hornet. And we need to be mobilizing, and not just this petition, but in other ways, to find very unique and creative solutions for these problems. If we treat yellow-legged hornet and tropicalaps the same way we treated other issues, we are going to have our knees taken out from underneath us. And so we need to get creative, and I believe that there are solutions, but it's going to take a lot of work and some opportunity.
I wasn't going to mention this, but since you brought it up, Cayman, the other two gentlemen on this call spent a lot of time with me a year and a half ago and helped develop a policy plan to change FIFRA to help us as an industry. And that's
the pesticide regulating law, for those that don't know.
Apologies. Thanks, David. So we do have a proposal that it is something else that we're working on, but it's kind of unrelated to this petition at the moment. But one of the things this petition can do for us is bring attention to it. There's David has mentioned a particular potential hornet side, I'll call it. That's not quite the right term, but potential poison for these. The parent company may or may not want to license it for yellow-legged hornets. But with enough signatures and enough pressure from the government, then they may be willing to step up and go, oh, yeah, we'll do that. And literally, this is something that could be done in a couple, 3 weeks with the right people. And that's the kind of attention that we're actually seeking here.
Mm-hmm.
And for something like the yellow-legged hornet, it is going to be something like new horneticides, right? New insecticides to target these things, or new strategies of getting them out there. It's going to be, military technology and drones that inject insecticide right into a nest, right? Like Randy talked about. It's going to be a biocontrol, and we don't even know what that would be. But at this point, there are a lot of people working extremely hard to try to fight these things back, and they're failing. They're slipping. They're getting through the lines. That doesn't mean that those people aren't doing really good work. It means that we need to get them new and better weapons to fight these things.
Reinforcements is what they need.
Exactly. And so this is an opportunity, as you say, that petition is really just a way to get more attention on this issue and see what ideas folks can come up with, and whether we can get, especially the federal government, but anybody involved in the top to bottom response to be flexible in the right ways to help us actually maybe get this thing under control.
And get beekeepers talking and communicating at a higher level as well.
Right.
We bear a good bit of responsibility for protecting our industry also. And it's easy for us because we are a smaller group and a lot of us are spread out. And a lot of the when I go to the honey producers, I'm talking to beekeepers that are running 20,000, 40,000, 10,000 hives all over the board. A lot of these are really good beekeepers, and but they're in the middle of nowhere half the time. They're in the Dakotas, they're in the Montana, they're in the swamp areas making Tupelo honey, and a lot of them are introverts. They like beekeeping because they don't want to be in a big city with a bunch of people, and which makes really great beekeepers. It's really not good for building relationships in some key areas. And as much as we would really like to be able for things just to take care of itself, sometimes nature taking care of itself, there's certain things that have gone extinct. We also look at the American chestnut, which in my region dominated the United States and other parts of North America, and were beautiful, massive trees. And when they were taken out of the ecosystem, because they were not only good for pollinators, because chestnuts produce really great pollens, but also they produce so much food for squirrels, chipmunks, deer, and of course other mammals and birds, and then other predators eat those animals. And so as one thing decreases, other things decrease as well. So even your friends who are into bird watching, they need to sign this petition. They need to get involved and be asking people questions. Hey, how is this yellow-legged hornet going to be impacting these important insect species that our favorite birds rely on? And
that's a key, Cayman. We have to figure out how to talk outside of just the bee industry. as beekeepers, we're all concerned about this, but this is much, much bigger than beekeepers. All of our produce people need to be aware of this. Anybody who's has a garden, likes insects whatsoever, butterflies, moths, the insects that other critters eat, like birds and bats.
Mhm.
These are all going to be impacted very severely by this yellow-legged hornet.
And I think it's important to understand that one of the best things a beekeeper can do is learn about these pests, learn about the hornets, learn about tropicolaps, become an ambassador, be knowledgeable if somebody asks you about it, or try to start these conversations with other people. Because if Cameron, you mentioned that the Apiary Extension Educators of America is going to have a booth at the expo. Swing by that booth. I happen to know that it's very close to the Better Be booth, so I'll wave to you from mine. But head there because I want every beekeeper to get a photo of them standing next to one of these nests or holding up one of these big old hornets, because that's the kind of thing that you can turn to somebody on your phone and say, I've seen one of these things, and here's why I think you should listen to me. You know, you've got Maggie Gill speaking, and she is the co-author of a book that has just been released. And if people get and read that book, you know, not every beekeeper wants to read a technical book about an invasive mite, but those that find that a fun way to spend a winter afternoon are going to wind up being better ambassadors. They can talk to their local congresspeople, they can talk to their State Department of Ag, they can talk to folks who just want to find ways to help the bees. One of the answers that we can give to the general public is support these sorts of projects, support these sorts of efforts to fight these incoming enemies to our bees. Because as I think one of us already said, beekeeping's hard enough, right? We've got invasive tracheal mites, we've got invasive varroa mites. I don't need anything new to come in and start causing trouble.
The natural predator of the yellow-legged hornet is the man and the woman that gets out there and takes a baseball bat to him. But unfortunately, again, like with yellow jackets, you can kill a handful, but until you get the nest and then get the queens, and you're really not just farting in the wind. It's just you're not accomplishing a whole lot. Yeah. So the Because Alliance booth, which is the organization that Charlie is representing today, and several other people will be there. It's a large booth between a Dayton and a Cowan and Man Lake's booth. It's at booth number 810, and they are going to be having conversations. And so if you want to get involved or throw comments to Charles to his face, which I would find entertaining, that is an opportunity that you don't want to miss. And there's also going to be a area for commercial beekeepers who are coming to the event to talk about commercial related problems as well. But it is for everybody, as far as what the Because Alliance is trying to do, is trying to just represent the beekeeping industry and push in a unique way. And there are multiple groups working on this. I'm excited by some of the people who are getting involved and working. So there are a lot of good things on the back end going. The problem of it is when we have these conversations with brilliant scientists, with the brilliant beekeepers, and people who want to get motivated, there's a lack of funds. There's a lack of manpower. So we need more people to get involved. And we do need more money. These issues are not something you can fix with $10,000. It takes a lot of manpower, and most people won't work for free when they're out slogging around in a swampy area trying to kill some yellow-legged hornets. You know what I'm saying?
You mentioned something
that really important. On every bottle of honey. You can put a sticker on every bottle of honey saying, "Hey, please write your legislator," or have a link to that. If we can come up with a QR code or something like that, we can stick on our honey bottles, get that word out.
Yeah. So this is that putting them on honey, having them maybe a sign in your booth, with some information on how you can reach your local state representative or whatever. Get people involved. There's so many millions of people in the United States. We don't need all of them. We just need a good bit of them to help us out. This is Richard Noel, who's one of my beekeeping buddies, runs a professional operation there in a certain part of France I can't pronounce.
Richard is my hero. I watched one of his videos where he's trapping yellow-legged hornets in his apiary, and I have to tell you, it was disturbing to me. So when he speaks, listen. He's dealing with this.
He is dealing with it. And so, 2 years ago, we had Richard come on and do a chat. And, his warning was that the United States didn't take this seriously, that we would wind up in a position like we're in right now. And again, that's the yellow-legged hornet was a missed opportunity on if we would have thrown everything that we had to offer at it, we could have shut it down. I think some people were like, well, in Washington, they were able to get rid of the Japanese or the giant hornet, but there's some differences in local ecosystems too. And so there have been many things that have come up into Canada over the years that just never was able to. It was never the Asian hornet, or what's the Asian hornet? There was a hornet that got up in Canada.
Yeah, it was the so-called murder hornet, the northern giant hornet is what they now call it. And one of the most important things we learned from that invasion is a lot of boots on the ground, a lot of work, a lot of eradication. But at the end of the day, those hornets, that queen that first came in wasn't well mated, and they don't do very well with inbreeding. These yellow-legged hornets, the queen that first came in was pretty well mated, and they can tolerate inbreeding a lot better. So at the end of the day, if the humans hadn't even been involved, the giant hornets in the Pacific Northwest might have just fizzled out and died, and these hornets in the Southeast will not.
And so it's a big problem that we missed that opportunity, and now that they've spread, and now instead of dealing with maybe 100 nests. What are we talking now? Does anybody even have an idea of that? Is it 10,000? Is it 5,000? Is it 20,000? I don't know. And so spring, Richard says spring trapping is key, and
catch and kill those queens before they make a new nest.
Yeah.
And let me talk for just a second here about the process right now. If Georgia or South Carolina wants to try something new, they have to get permission to do it. They have to ask APHIS for funding. It's a whole kind of a slow freight train of movement. What we want to do is put something in place where somebody has a great idea. You get 3 or 4 people convinced it's a great idea. Maybe you want another 10,000 traps. Maybe you have something to try. But this can all be done in a week, not months at a time. That's part of our problem right now. We're loaded down with bureaucracy between state and federal governments and EPA, and there's nobody that's running this through. Again, it's got to be fixed today, guys. We need help.
It's got to be a military operation. And I don't mean it has to be the Army, but it has to be a military style operation.
Agreed. Mm-hmm. And if we can get a senator or a congressman on our side to do that, that's what we really need. We need a congressman's staff to call the EPA and say, look, guys, this has to be done today. So if you can sign the petition, fantastic. Get all your friends to sign it. Get everybody else to help. But if you know a senator or a congressman, reach out to us.
Well, I wanted to say last thing for me is there's several different trap styles out there, but what I'm hearing from the apiary inspectors is, make your own, trap using something like an apple juice jug, a grape juice jug. There's several other jugs that'll work, and there's some instructions online that one of them is by Clemson. I'm fixing to share that, but they're using grape juice and brown sugar. These are very easy available to get type of materials. Here's a little video. And I'm going to put the link down below, so anyone who's in that region, or even, semi around that region, maybe you're 100 miles from it, might not hurt to set one out. Just see if you catch one, because a lot of times we're behind on these things. Or if one gets transported and it's just one and you're able to catch it and nuke it, maybe you help out a good bit there. So I just put the link down below for a YouTube video on how to make a trap from the University of Clemson. And again, I want to say a big thank you to Penn State, Auburn University. Also, there's some guys from South Carolina. There's a few other universities. I honestly, I can't remember all. There's 5 different universities that make the Educators of America booth. And that's kind of unique to have at a show like mine, and for them to bring all of this stuff and microscopes for people to use and test. And this is what the Bee Expo is truly about, is this collaboration and this communication of people from different backgrounds. Of course, people like me who are beekeepers, people who are doing citizen science and research, and people who are full-time researchers for universities and labs, and also folks who are producing product. There needs to be a communication between all those groups so that we can inform one another and move rapidly on these issues. We can't be taking 10 years to find a solution. It's going to hurt our industry. Frederick Dunn, thank you for being a part of this as well. Fred has good videos, and he'll be at our show as one of our speakers and VIPs. And we're looking forward to having Randy and Fred and others at our VIP dinner. We're going to have 2 dinners, Thursday and Friday night. So it's a small group, but if you're wanting to hang out, talk about these issues, or weep on Charlie's shoulder, we have all those things available for you.
I do have a challenge here. Frederick and Bob Binney and Stepler and all of those guys that are affiliates of yours, Cayman, we need them to help spread this message also. We need as many signatures as possible, as fast as possible. And what we're going to do is when we hit 5,000 signatures, that'll go out to the Secretary of Ag's office. When we hit 10,000, they're going to get another notice. When they hit 15,000, they're going to get another notice. We hit 20,000, I'm going to have a box of all these signatures delivered to them. And we're going to make a noise until we get the attention we need.
Well, yeah.
I can see our industry come up with some money for a bounty system to report findings. If somebody locates a trap, boy, if you put out a $500 or $1,000 bounty, that'd make it worthwhile for people not only to trap, but to get out there and start looking at trees. I mean, the FBI does that. They want to find somebody. Why not our industry do that?
I think that would be pretty effective right there, and honestly might be cheaper and versus some methods. Now, getting Daryl and Cletus out there with some homemade potato gun they've turned into some Gatlin, they might be an issue. But hey, things that happen to rednecks, it happens all the time.
You blast a hornet nest out of the sky, I think that's good for everybody.
Yes. Run. All jokes aside, I love the idea of a bounty system, as long as good instruction. That's what they're trying to do down there with Florida with the pythons that are just all over the place, devastating all of the native mammals and birds and all these important species native to Florida. And they've put bounties on those and a few other things, like some of the nutria rats that are devastating a lot of the natural habitat. Yeah, Tannerite works, flamethrower.
Hey, this is exactly why we have the Second Amendment, and we should all have flamethrowers.
Yeah,
right?
but not in California, though. In Tennessee, yes, but not in California. They have enough fires out there. I mean, that will take a lot of nests out, but we don't want to take out Randy's operation. Let's do some good research over there. But seriously, folks, take the time to send this petition to your bee club groups. Charles, as you get these petitions in, if you get a box of them, send me photos as you do that so that we can share this with people. I think one of the failings that some things that we've done in the past is just not continuing the communication, letting people be a part of the progress that's being made. And so a lot of people feel like these things just disappear. Even sometimes when things are being done, if people can't see it, they don't know, and they just feel like, well, no one's doing anything. This was a waste of my signature, my time.
We are asking for your email address here so that we can send you updates, and I promise we will send you an update as soon as we get some attention. We'll send up updates out to everybody when we file this off and say, look, we're sending this to so-and-so. And that is something that we will communicate with you. And if you have somebody we should send this information to, let us know who that is. Reach out to us. We're dead serious about this. This is not a joke, guys.
It's not a joke, and that is not true. It's a $5 reward, not a $5,000 reward. That was a typo by Brian. I wish if I had the capital, if I was a billionaire, that would actually be an interesting project for me. But this is the bee industry, and there's a.
We don't have any billionaires.
Yeah, we not, if we do, somebody needs to find them right now, and I'm going to become their best buddy. And like, hey, man, I really need a tank. What do you need a tank for? Go to South Carolina and Georgia. So sign the petition. There's going to be more information coming out. Follow all the different groups here. Listening to Randy Oliver when he gives presentations. Follow the Bee Cause Alliance. Being a part of their email. Charles won't spam you, and if he does, let me know. Because I'm actually, I think, an inch taller than Charles, which is one of the he's one of the few people that I
a rare occurrence.
That's right. And yeah, half track. Yeah, Keith Spillman actually has a half track. We could use that and mount something on the back of it. And Dr. Peck with Better Bee is doing a lot, and there's several other people as well. So get involved. Stay tuned. Don't just wait for somebody else to pick it up for your bee club. Be that person that says, you know what, I'm going to throw this on my shoulders and carry it for our state, our bee club. And thank you, Fred, for sharing this. I know you're going to share it. Thanks, Fred. And guys, I know you have a lot to do with Better Bee and all your respective businesses. I have an expo to run, and this is very inconvenient. I'm like $1,000 an
go
hour.
up to another video. It's another Zoom.
Exactly. Randy, thank you for joining us.
You bet. Thank
Charles,
you.
we'll be in touch. We'll see you guys at the Bee Expo.
Everybody, thank you for joining the Bad News Bears for another miserable morning of honeybee problems, but we're doing our best to help. So join us.
Send help. We'll see you later.
All right.
Thanks, guys.